word champion raised in the Netherlands. In her work, she searches for her own identity, her gender, her history, and place in the world. Loucka Fiagan studied sociology at university and then pursued performance arts in the Royal Academy of Beaux-Arts. His practice is at the intersection of poetry, dance, music, and video, and he recently released an EP called Aporia. Welcome, Loucka and Lisette.
Hello,
Hey.
Lisette. How are you doing?
I'm okay. These days have been a lot, but I'm okay.
A lot in what sense?
A lot of work and a lot of thinking.
Overthinking?
Not per se.
And thinking towards a certain...
Like thinking and making choices. Yeah. And you?
I've been a bit overwhelmed these past days.
Yeah?
Probably for the same reasons. I've been a bit thinking and processing choices that I was supposed to make, and a bit confronted to, let's say, my confidence. But I think it's settled down a bit, and I'm happy to be here in
Yeah, me
this
too.
golden room. I think like the color yellow also has something pretty reassuring.
You're right?
Yeah.
But it's like the light. Like yellow is like light or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. We say that it's also the solar plexus. It's like the seat of my persona, my ego. I see that you have a lot of books there. Do you
Right.
want to tell me about it?
Yeah, so I wanted to bring an object. But I was thinking, do I have an object that makes me, that shows that I come from a past of colonialism or something?
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out what. And I knew that one thing that I'm very aware of, that shows me my history or something, is like the language that I speak and the accent that I have. And I always feel like, in a way, I've been just dropped somewhere, because my parents came from Rwanda and came all the way here. And then like I just got dropped somewhere, and that's how I talk and how people like, what people associate me with, in a way.
Were you born here then?
Yeah, in the
You were born-
Netherlands.
Okay.
Yeah,
In the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Okay.
but I was made in Africa.
Yeah. Nice one.
Like that all happened there. I'm always so proud to say that. So I wanted to bring my languages.
Okay.
So to objectify my languages, I brought poems and books and a song.
Okay. And are these books and poems from different languages, or is it like...
Yeah, so it's all stands for another language.
Okay.
For example, I went to Brazil for a literature festival, and then I became friends with the poets there, and it was amazing. And every time we would perform, there would be translations behind us, or in Portuguese or in English. So like we could communicate through our poems,
Yeah.
but we couldn't in real life. So I'm trying to learn Portuguese to talk to the friends that I made there. And it's so weird because it's yet another white language I'm learning to talk to my colored friends.
Because you were saying something about that earlier, right? Like the fact that... How many languages do you speak again
So
in total?
I do speak 3, I think, and 2 I speak them kind of.
Yeah.
And then 4 of them are like languages from Europe, and one of them is the language of my mother. It's like my mother tongue. It's Kinyarwanda. Kinyarwanda.
Kinyarwanda. And you speak it fluently, or...?
I think I do.
You do? You think you do? You've been there a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah?
My grandmother thinks I do as well. But then all the other people, they are just like... they're like the accents.
Yeah, but as long as you understand and you speak it fluently, then it's okay. I have that also, like... I come from Togo. And... but me, it's a bit a shame. Like, I'm even wondering if I should say this, because I grew up in Togo. But
Okay.
but I don't speak fluently the language, but I understand it very well.
Yeah.
So as soon as I'm around people, I catch very easily onto what they're saying.
Yeah.
But if I have to speak it, it's very hard.
It just doesn't come out, something like that.
Yeah.
Or,
It makes me often think of like the idea of language is like it's something more than just the words, because you really understand when people are talking. But if I have to like break down every word that they're saying, I'm not so sure I could, you know.
And how do you feel about the language?
Language in general, or,
No,
or my mother's tongue? Well, I must say like there's a form of regret, because and that comes down to the object that I wanted to share. And it's interesting because actually we didn't even speak about it together, but we came with the same object in the end, but with different forms.
Okay.
I came with it was the same questions. I was like, I could find an object, but I wanted to really spark a discussion and something that would really trigger my interest. So I came with a picture of my great-grandfather.
Can I see it?
Of course.
Oh.
And for the little story, my great-grandfather, who's called Loucka Fiagan.
So great-grandfather means?
It's the father of my grandfather.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. So the grandfather of my mother, and etc. My great-grandfather, Loucka Fiagan, let's go to it, who was the son of Fiagan, who was, let's say, the chief of a village back in Togo. He was a linguist and a historian, and he gave himself the mission in seeing that there was a threat for local languages like that with the arrival of colonial languages, written languages, that these languages might disappear. So he really wanted to write it, like have this language, which is called Ewe, it's called, but it's written Ewe. He wanted to write this language down, so he started by translating the Bible in Ewe. And
oh wow.
Yeah, and he also did a whole study on the culture of the Ewe people, and started to study the language, the sounds that they produce with certain words, and found similarities apparently with ancient Egypt. And since he was a historian, he also, how do we say that, made links with the fact that the ancient Egyptian people went down, and so since there were correlations, would say that the Ewe people were also descendants from the ancient Egyptians. And I discovered that not so long ago from my uncle, and I was a bit surprised because I mean, I grew up and I never heard about this, and such a crazy legacy, and would also explain why I'm so passionate about language in general. And I was like, why don't we know more about this? I mean, this is also about roots, to be able to know that this research has been done, and I would also like to maybe go further in this. So yeah, that's my object. It's also language in a sense.
Yeah, that's so funny. We both brought language in a way.
Yeah. But you work a lot with language.
Yeah, I do. But I always do it in a way that I don't think about it. So I'm always like picking up words or like working with language. But it's never that I really analyze language or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just lately that I started like noticing that the thinking, like that there's so much more in language than what we think. Like naturally, I do so much with it without really.
Noticing it.
Yeah. And then I also brought my mother tongue, Kinyarwanda.
Yeah.
But I brought it in a song. I couldn't find a book of it.
Okay. Yeah, I would be happy to hear that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Let me...
What's the name of the song?
Tarihinda.
And what does that mean?
I don't even know.
Ah! Could you tell me some words in I forgot that.
Kinyarwanda.
Kinyarwanda, yeah.
So what do you want to know? I like this word, humura.
Humura.
Yeah, it's like don't worry in a way. But it's said in a way when you're really worried and someone wants to calm you down, and it's like humura.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And then everyone. Yeah. By Cecile Kairewa. It makes me think of all the weddings.
Yeah.
And just like the living room and my mother.
How many times have you been there?
In Rwanda?
Yeah.
A few times. I went for the first time when I was 10. Went back when I was 15. And then when I was 20, I went back a few times.
Okay. In a specific area, or you also visited?
I visited,
around,
yeah.
Because most of you have also a lot of family over there, of course. Yeah. Nice. And what books would you like to share? Also, is there you just took any, or like is there something you would like to share?
Yeah,
in
but
particular?
I wanted to share a poem.
Yeah.
But then, like, the poem is in Dutch, so you wouldn't understand.
Doesn't matter. I mean, I'll get the translation.
But I can also
sometime.
get you, like, because I can't read French so well. I just understand it a bit.
Ah, but is there the translation in French?
No, this is a French poem. So maybe you could read it.
In French, and then you have it in Dutch, and you read something in Dutch after.
Yeah, something else.
That can be good. Cool.
So this is Lisette Lombe, and she's...
Lisette, like you.
Yeah. And she's a poet from, from Belgium.
From Belgium?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I really love her work, even though I don't understand all of it always.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another question. Maybe we talk about that after I read the poem. Bleu mer du sud, bleu ciel, bleu pastel, bleu azur, bleu acier, bleu pétrole, bleu cobalt, bleu France, bleu roi, bleu nuit, bleu marine. Chez moi, à Kinshasa, Marine Le Pen, on ne te connaît pas. À Kinshasa, le bleu marine, c'est la couleur de l'espoir. C'est la couleur des uniformes qui ne partent pas à la guerre. C'est l'appel de la rue, des églises, qui rampent au pied des écolières. Ici, en Europe, le bleu marine, c'est la couleur du dragon. Un dragon racé et élégant, beau parleur, en fumeur de rétine. Un dragon affable, flatteur de pensées étriquées, brocardeur d'étrangers. Un dragon qui a fait peau neuve, du rose sur les joues, du phare sur les marécages, et qui a réussi à nous faire oublier qu'il était un dragon. Bleu marine, ces bottes nazies chic qui battent le pavé des mémoires courtes, bleu marine, son costume AER qui lisse, qui polisse les croix et les crocs. Bleu marine, ces enfants qui défilent à rebours d'histoire, fiers, décomplexés, néo-Charlie, nouvelle Jeanne d'Arc, cracheurs de haine, anti-homo, anti-négro. Un peu de terroir, beaucoup de terreur. On racle. On gratte les bas étages de Maslow. Mais chez moi, à Kinshasa, Marine Le Pen, on ne te connaît pas. À Kinshasa, le bleu marine, c'est la couleur de l'espoir. C'est la couleur des uniformes qui ne partent pas à la guerre. C'est l'appel de la rue, des églises, qui rampent au pied des écolières. C'est la cour de récréation où l'on se joue des maîtres. On imite, on se moque, léger, farceur, innocent. On ne s'imagine pas qu'un jour on mourra en migrant. Du sable dans les cheveux, du sable dans les yeux, du sable entre les dents. On imite, on se moque, léger, farceur, innocent. On annonce, on répète, on perroquette. Bleu mer du sud, bleu ciel, bleu pastel, bleu azur, bleu acier, bleu pétrole, bleu cobalt, bleu France, bleu roi, bleu nuit, bleu marine. Wow, it's beautiful.
Could you explain to me what it's about?
Well,
I love the poem, I just don't understand it.
well, it's a tricky thing sometimes to like be in the performance and ingest everything, because I read and I ingest like intuitively.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm not like, but
Yeah,
she's
okay.
basically comparing this, well, with the metaphor of the color, the relationship between basically like the social atmosphere here and there, and I'll have to reread it again. Got me there,
but you read it really
beautiful.
very nicely.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So
I
about
really like the rhythm in it. It's very beautiful.
about your object, I had another question, because you are also doing a lot with language, and I met you as a poet, as a performer.
Yeah.
So before figuring out or discovering about your great-grandfather, did you know that there was someone who was into language in your family?
Not so much, actually. I just knew that my grandfather, for instance, has a special relationship with language. It's kind of a myth in the family, but he always does like these collective letters to the rest of the family members. And he puts a lot of effort in it, that it's really well written. You know? He likes the usage of language. He would say phrases like, ever since I'm young, I remember like he would really correct you on the language, to a point where it was a bit like weird when my parents were young. But apart from that, not really, no. It's only lately that I discovered this and came out like a revelation. I was like, oh wow, I mean,
yeah, what did it mean to you?
What did the fact of knowing that my great-grandfather was this, or just the question of language in itself?
No, the fact of knowing.
Yeah, I think there's this question of heritage. Like, sometimes I wonder if the choices you make haven't been already influenced by choices that people made before you. Like, you know, there's something about like genetics, or so I feel like there's something like that already in my system that will orientate me towards these things. Like, and I'm wondering, like, maybe because I received this from someone. It's always interesting to see it like that, because then it helps me to not see myself, to not see yourself as ever as like first in something, but you're always already part of something else that's going on. So it gives even more sense, in a way, to what I'm doing. Like, it just like knowing that is like, oh, of course, you know. So go more into it, like dive into it even more.
It's like our story, or our stories do not start with us in a way. Like, it's an ongoing story, and like discovering it is like confirming this in a way.
Yeah. And is there someone also in your family who was into writing or any form of language?
I know like my family, but I feel like in the Rwandan culture itself, there's a lot of storytellers. And there's a lot of storytelling, and also so a huge thing in the culture are the cows.
What?
The cows.
Is that how we call the storytellers?
No.
Oh.
Cows, like, how do you say that?
Oh, cows.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
The animal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
So like, it's a precious symbol in the culture. So
Okay.
imagine you would say to a woman, "Oh, you're as beautiful as a cow." It would be like, it would be the compliment.
Oh, wow. Which is culturally the opposite to here. Like, you're a cow, I love you.
Another thing is I was calling my grandmother. I'll continue my story, but I was calling my grandmother like a few days ago, and then she looks at my face, and I'm in my bed, and I'm like, I tried to make time to call her because I really wanted to call her, and it was just in the morning before work. So I'm in my bed, and my cheeks are like, you know, and then she's like, "Oh my God, you became so beautiful, you became so fat." And I'm like standing up and showing the mirror and being like, "No, I lost weight." She's like, "No, you're so fat, it's so beautiful."
See what I mean? Like, we were talking about it earlier in the kitchen, but it's this thing of like each culture values beauty or
really, yeah,
intelligence in a different way, and yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, the cows, and then you also have the cow poets or something like that. I don't know how I would call it. Yeah, no, they talk and then they say a lot of words, and then they are really like yeah, spoken word artists.
Yeah, a bit slammers, right? A bit.
Yeah, so they talk and they're like, and I can't even follow it because like my Kinyarwanda is not as good to like follow all the words, and it's like yeah, there's a lot of poetry, I think.
Yeah. I don't know why, but it makes me think of how do we call them again? I forgot this band, but it was part of these originators, like the black beat poetry, the first slam poets, I would say, who were slamming over jazz music or percussions, and it was also this very upbeat. But there was a whole group. I have them on my YouTube playlist, and unfortunately, maybe I don't know if we're allowed to. Like, of course, there are no rules. We can, but meanwhile, maybe you can say something, and I'll look for it.
Meanwhile, I can read the Dutch poem.
Oh yes, and I'll look for that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, yeah, perfect.
Okay. I wanted to choose. Wait. Okay, I'll just do this one. So let me first explain the poem, or the poet, Radna Fabias. It's she lives in the Netherlands right now, and it's like, because when I grew up and I wanted to become a poet, the only thing that I saw in poets were like white men, and I always felt like that's not what I can become. Like, I can't become a white man, so I can't become a poet. And this is the first time I was even a bit older, and I was already doing poetry in a way, but then I saw people who looked like me in the slam poetry world and all that stuff, but never in the books. And then I read Radna Fabias, and it was so crazy because she's writing in Dutch, and she's writing about the Dutch context as well. And it's the first time that I was like, whoa, poets who look like me exist.
You could identify much more also to the style
context,
of literature, the context. Because I mean, to what you're saying, I also have like the question, because since it's you don't see her face, or you don't know it, right? But there's something else also in the form of the writing,
in the words,
which apply the words,
and also in the view. Like, it's mostly her view and the things, because in her poetry, I feel like she's looking a lot, looking around and being a spectator. And it's the things she notices that I've never noticed in other poems. So she looks at things, and like the leggings or the tights of women, of aunties or something like that. And I'm like, those are the things that I've seen, you know?
Yeah. So it's like the gaze is similar also.
So I'll read it. You won't understand. So Gieser Wilderman. Gieser Wildeman. Gieser Wildeman is een stoofpeer. Ik ben een vrouw. Dat is het dak van een 3 eeuwen oud huis. Ik ben een vrouw. Dat is het troebele vocht dat uit een Spaanse perzik langs zijn lippen loopt. En ik ben helaas het vocht en de perzik. En elk ander handzaam, zacht, zoet, sappig fruit, want ik ben een vrouw. En dat is het brilmontuur van een man van gemiddelde intelligentie, maar ik ben een vrouw en in mijzelf genoeg. Er is geen leegte in mij. Er is wel een schuilplaats, een voorkamer, een wachtruimte, een plek waar ik iemand kan ontvangen, een man. Het begin van een kind, de vingers van een vrouw. Toch heb ik aan mezelf genoeg, het maakt niet uit. Hoeveel postmoderne gendertheorie ik aan mijn heupen hang, het is aan mij te zien, ik ben een vrouw. Ik zou kunnen bestaan naast een man, maar een man is geen lichaam. Een man is geen brommende bastonnen, geen lage stem, dikke armen, stroeve vingers, dikke huid, geen baard. Een man is geen baard. Een man is ook geen vage vuur. Een man is geen lot. Een man is geen huis om in te wonen. Een man is geen bed om op te liggen. Een man is geen werkverschaffing. Een man is geen afleiding. Een man is geen arbeidstherapie. Een man is geen raspaard. Een man is meer dan aanbiddende ogen in een gesloten nacht. Een man is geen kofferbak, geen zwaailicht. Een man is geen diepe buiging voor mijn kruis. Een man heeft ook gevoelens, denkt ook na, heeft ook pijn. Soms weet hij zelfs waarom hij pijn heeft. Een man is geen vleeshaak, geen fileermes, geen geweer. Geen heet merkijzer, geen heilig boek. Een man is geen wapen, geen hobby. Een man is 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 geen strafregel. Een man is geen troon om met gekruiste benen op te zitten als een dame. Ik ben een dame. Ik ben geen dame. Ik ben een vrouw.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Sorry I didn't understand all that.
It's fine. We already speak so much white languages.
Yeah, and it's so but I like the
sound of it?
also, yeah. And the way you read also.
Thank you.
How you give space. But that's not a secret, right? I didn't find, unfortunately, the one I was looking for. I found something else.
Okay.
But it's have you ever heard of The Last Poets?
Yeah.
Yeah, voila. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe we just continue talking. But I had something I wanted to say, but then it slipped out of my mind. I was thinking also of a poet that I really like, who's called Edouard Glissant.
Mm.
Yeah, you know, okay.
Yeah.
Because I really like the idea of, because you say white people language, and
No, white languages.
Oh yeah, white language. White languages. And I like the fact that he comes from an area that has been colonialized, and he still admits the fact that he cannot detach himself from this culture, that he is part of this culture, but that he is also the seed that will enable this culture to be able to reinvent itself. So he's doing the journey from where he comes from in Guyana, to not fall completely into the folklore and rejecting the colonial language, but also not falling into the game of, as Frantz Fanon described it, white mask, and completely identifying himself to this colonial culture, but actually going with what he has to reinvent and rewrite. And I think that's really, it's a very adventurous, brave, and also, I don't know who asked this question, I think at some point during the day, how we would see the future. Because, for instance, this is a question like how would you see, for instance, an ideal state, you know, with no more, with no imprint of colonialism anymore, where it's come to a point where kind of...
Where it's gone?
It's faded a bit, or I think it will never leave, of course, but...
I don't know, I always think that like history leaves its prints. So I feel like there will be a time where things do not bother or something, or perhaps languages will be forgotten, other languages will be taught or something, and it will be okay perhaps or something like that. But I don't think that there is a world where you can't see what happened or something.
Yeah. And because you were saying earlier on that, okay, you start, can I ask you also, when did you really start taking seriously the fact that you wanted to be a poet, for instance?
It's always so hard.
Yeah, right? Because it's maybe a journey.
Yeah, it's always so hard. Because when I look at the past, and I was already like writing a lot as a kid, and I was like trying to publish...
But sorry to interrupt you, when you say as a kid, it's like...
when I was like...
3 years old.
I'm trying to publish, no. It's like when I was 14 or 13, like as a during my puberty. And I was already trying to publish stuff, and then like I had a talk like a few days ago with one of my cousins, younger cousins, and I was like, oh yeah, I would really like to do something serious with my poetry or something. And then he's like, well, didn't you do that? You know, like back that time. So when I was around 14, I was taking it serious.
Yeah.
But like when I look at it now, I'm like, I wasn't taking it serious. So imagine, like, perhaps in 10 years, I'll look at myself now and be like, I wasn't taking it serious
then.
So yeah, you know, I don't know when I started.
But it's also a funny question, because do we have to take it seriously also? Like,
I don't know. And you?
I don't know if I still take it.
No, like when did you... No, how did you start writing?
I think like you, like I've been writing for very long actually. Like I used to have this thing where I was a bit of a geek when I was a teenage, and I would have...
what is another word for geek?
Nerd.
Okay, I thought
but
so.
Then and I would have like this, there was, in French we call it forum, RPG, but it's like, it's a space where people gather around a certain passion. And in this case, the passion was Naruto.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and then, but it was a role-play game, so you would create a character, and you would play these adventures out with this character in this server with all these passionates about Naruto. But the nice thing about this is that it wasn't like a video game where you had the character on model out. You wrote your adventures, so it was always a dialogue. For instance, I would say, okay, now I'm coming here, I'm sitting here, I say that, I take my cup, and then after you have to interact. And I did this for a lot of my teenagers. So I got into writing a bit like this. Because at some point there's also a competition behind it, because you really want to write well. So
that's nice.
Yeah, but that wasn't poetry yet. I think that came later.
Like when?
I can't say. That's the funny thing. I think it's been there quite a while, but it was, at some point it was also something that I couldn't, in French on dit assumer. how do we say assumer in English?
Assume?
Assume, yeah. It's like I would write these sentences and then I would hide them because, I mean, my friends would be like, what are you doing? And more and more it just meeting the right people, also being in the right environments, and also getting to have more references also. Because since, yeah, in my childhood I didn't have so much references also to that, not too much opening to that. And sorry, you asked me if I had writers in my family, and I completely omitted the fact that my mother wrote a book.
Oh shit!
Yeah, my mother wrote a book, but she never published it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's
and
stupid.
You witnessed her writing?
I didn't. She was young, around 21.
Okay, but did she tell? She told you about it when you were
saw her.
growing up?
I saw the book.
Oh,
I
wow.
read pages of it. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
But there's one thing like that I'm thinking about because of the objects that I brought, and like something that it doesn't really like I don't really think of it, so it doesn't really bother me. But when I think of it, it bothers me to feel like, okay, so I'm writing in all these languages and trying to make it my own or something, but then I can never call it my own language. You know what I mean? As in, growing up, talking Dutch, like sometimes mothers of like friends of mine would correct me before I was speaking, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And at some point, because I loved language so much, during high school, I would get like super good grades only for Dutch, like for all the others I would like fail because I don't know, I wasn't putting in effort sometimes, but I would like sometimes get so much like high grades on a piece that I would have written, and then also publishing the thing as a kid, and then someone would talk to me and be like, oh, this is really special that you are the one who is doing this, and I wouldn't understand until my dad would say like, oh, it's because you're actually from Rwanda, so, you know, like stuff like that. And then, okay, trying to make the language my own, but it's never mine, you know? And the language that kind of should be mine, I can't even speak it without this accent. You know what I mean?
Completely. I'm just, I'm looking for another reference that it makes me think of Webb Dubois, who would talk about, I forgot the term, but it's kind
Dubois?
of... Yeah, Dubois.
Oh, yeah. I didn't read him yet.
You should.
He's on my list.
Yeah. And he talked about this term of like being at two places at a time, and that Black Americans would have this, that you adapt yourself to the dominant form, and so Black Americans, between Black Americans, will behave or talk in a certain way. And as soon as even there's one white person, you switch.
Code switching.
Yeah, code switching, yeah. And this is a bit what you're saying, that you're coming from somewhere, and you even though you didn't grow up in Rwanda, but this gaze is put on you that you are an other. And so you don't feel like inherently legitimate in speaking or writing in this language.
Like you don't belong in the language.
Yeah. Which is very a specific type of alienation, because it's not anymore like I'm in a space and people are making me understand that this space is not mine. Yeah. Or actually now this space is actually the language, which is even more abstract.
Yeah, because it's in your mouth. Like it became, like it's in your body now.
There is no escape. But I really felt this. I mean, what you just said speaks so strong to me, because I came here. So I grew up in Togo, and I came here around 16. And when you're 16, I mean, you're in the middle of your puberty, all the groups are already made. You have already a slang, a way of talking, a way of behaving. And you arrive here, so I arrive here, for instance, and you are completely thrown to the fact that you do not speak correctly or you do not behave correctly, you know, you cannot like
You're so
make
aware of that. Yeah.
And at some point there's something cool about it because I mean it's like this very exotic character, like oh yeah, there's something exotic, but at some point it also limits you in certain spheres, especially in the more intellectual spheres, because there's a certain way that you have to formulate your words.
Yeah.
And if you don't have these codes, you're not what you say isn't even taken on account.
Yeah.
So this double being in this code switching is something I think we face so strongly, because at some point you're like, okay, but I have things to say, I think that are worthwhile. So I will have to play this game of adapting, but so strong that at some point it's nearly schizophrenic, you know. You kind of like lose yourself in this thing.
Yeah.
I will write this language as good and even better than you, you know. And at some point, like I look at this and I'm like, oh, I kind of lost something on the way. I mean, I had another way of speaking also.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, and now it's interesting to do the road back also, to see where you have gone, and then also like take back, because in the end, and that's another writer. I don't know if you hear about Moten.
No.
Moten.
That's one I need to write down.
Yeah, Moten. And he's also talking about a lot of this space of in between. So you're rewriting the language, because at some point you have to admit that even if you're code switching, at some point you will never be what they expect from you, and you'll never be that thing. And at some point, it's also nice to admit and to know that you also the carrier of a possible change, you know, a possible innovation, and whether it's in language, whether it's in art, you know, just know that. You're kind of giving something that the current system can learn from. I don't know how you feel about that in your work, for instance. Is that also something you feel like you're bringing?
In what way?
Or maybe let me reform my question, like, because you said earlier that you don't think so much about like the process of language so far in when you're doing it, which makes sense. But also, like, what are you also achieving, or what are you aiming for also with your work? I don't know if it's a clear question.
Ooh, it's hard.
Like, yeah,
so
maybe it's hard.
What am I aiming for in general, or
what do you feel
in regard to language? Or
no, not in regards to language.
Oh, okay.
Let's keep it back to like what you're giving to people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's always really hard because me writing started with just me writing. And then there's a difference between me writing and me sharing what I'm writing. And I do feel like I do write for people who have the same story as, like, the same kind of story in a way that I have, to kind of translate the feelings or everything that comes with it.
Yes.
So I feel like that's one of my main reasons to share, so that, because at a certain age I could feel that I can translate things in a way, but then on the other hand, I also it's still me writing, you know, like at the end of the day it's still me writing, so it's still something that is mine, that I share with the world, and it can become yours as well. Yeah.
There's this also very intimate lecture that you're giving on your experiences.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, I remember from the times that I saw, like, there's this, like, since you're opening a door to yourself also, and you're being pretty honest about it, I'm like doing nonsense with this thing. I hope it's not chaos. I'm like hitting it.
So that's what I look like though.
No, but yeah, it's really. Je trouve pas le mot. Ça te prend aux tripes. In French we'd say, but like it takes you from the guts.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna turn this off too.
That's fine. And you? Because I think it's really hard.
It is a hard question. It is a hard question, but it's helpful. I think because it helps having a mirror on, and for a long time I was writing more to myself, which is why sometimes when I was writing songs, for instance, it was more. It's like a journal, but to myself. It's like also a way to get thoughts out of my head onto a paper. But when it came to actually delivering them or performing them, I also sometimes felt like, was it really something I wanted to give the people? And yeah, and so for a long time I also made a difference between the rap and the poetry, where I think the poetry was more things I really wanted to communicate, like, for instance, I don't know, intimate revelations that I would have, sometimes a bit more philosophical or about life. And those would be more like access towards the public, and the other, like just getting my stuff out of my head, was more. And through the years, it just evolved a lot. Now it's become something that's like a bit just, it goes in phases, but for a long time it was also like stream of thoughts a lot, and writing often helps me to clarify things. And therefore it makes sense to give it to people, because it's really like I'm going through a journey where my thoughts at first are a bit hazy and abstract, and through the writing actually I'm getting answers, and then I feel like giving them.
And how do you feel about, because let me first explain where the question is coming from. So lately I've been getting advice on like the technical aspects of writing, or maybe I don't know what you studied, or maybe you studied something in it, I don't know, or like studying languages or studying poetry and all of that. And I always feel in a way like I do want to know everything about it, and in another way I really don't want to know anything about it and just write. Or also when I write a column, I don't think so much about grammar and all that stuff when I'm writing, you know. But then on the other hand, I do think it's important, but I also feel like it's more important to know multiple languages instead of one language to know it's so perfect. So how do you feel about like the technical side?
I think, but it goes back to this other thing we were talking about, of like not having our roots in the dominant language. And one of my favorite rappers called Milo, his name is also now R.A.P. Ferreira, so he has a style which is a bit of a blend between slam poetry and rap.
Oh, cool.
And it's often very...
it's in French?
No, it's in English.
Oh, okay.
Check it, R.A.P. Ferreira.
Okay.
And it's really, really nice. It's very mindy sometimes, but it's very engaged also. And he was speaking once in an interview about this thing of saying, like, because for such a long time Black Americans were also excluded from the highly educated spheres. They made their university in the school of hip hop in a certain sense. You know, that was how they also shared their knowledge in a certain sense. And I think that a lot of my inspiration comes from reading, spending hours of reading in Genius, you know, lyrics and stuff like that. I mean, because there's marvelous poetry also, and we neglect it. We really neglect it because we value one form of poetry, and I'm sure like in 20 years we'll be looking down at some of these poets because these works and these words are splendid. So related to the question of technique, I think it's a bit in this nature of, you know, it's life technique. You pick out a bit from here and there and you assemble it in your own mind, and it's become more like a syncretic way of or intuitive way of arranging things that schools cannot really understand nor teach you, because you'll come with a certain way of doing something and they'll say, no, it's not the right, but who are they to say that that's not the right way of saying it? So I think I'm more on the side of, I don't want to know about your technique.
Yeah.
And
Me too, but it's a bit hard.
it's nice to pick it, but I would say like I would do it for myself. I would see, because of course I'm also influenced a lot by Western poetry, but then even Western poetry is so multifarious, and you know, there's everything, you know, there's from the surrealist poetry to like the more classic and to the more beat poetry. And for instance, I'm very influenced by beat and surrealism, which are forms that are much more free, I would say, like not so in how do we say, like bars and stuff.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I don't know, it just speaks to me more. I feel like it's more emotional, or there's more imagination.
Can you say a bit more about your influences? You've dropped a lot of names. I'm like
name dropping. So, I don't know. Well, it can go in all directions. So, like, let's stay in, like, for instance, in music. I would say, like, Milo, R.A.P. Ferreira. I'm thinking also of Earl Sweatshirt. I'm thinking of an artist that I discovered not so long ago called Billy Woods. And it's this whole new school also of artists who are putting more, let's say, importance to the message, to the emotion also, than just flow and, you know, like, and there's nothing wrong also to that, but then I feel like it brings a whole other dimension, like very much in depth. And they're also deconstructing, which I like. They're also like really playing on the deconstructing of what it is really to rap and bringing it back to this, maybe the roots of rhythm and poetry, you know, like that it doesn't have to be so 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, it can be also spoken. You know. And you?
A lot of music, song lyrics. Also a lot of Dutch music. And mostly when it's like poetic kind of storytelling songs, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe I should drop names as well.
You don't have to. You don't have
no,
to.
okay.
I mean, you can drop schools or you
but
can.
Like
so
Lauren Hill, to
Yeah.
drop a name.
Yeah.
Or Liane Lahabas. Or
I don't know her.
Oh, okay. It's like most of the times it are women with guitars who write their own songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very influenced by that. And then I could say I've been influenced by like poets and like books, but I feel like that's more what I searched for after. Yeah.
Ginsberg, Burroughs also, Saul Williams.
Oh yeah. I met him in Brazil.
No, no, no. Seriously? That's where?
In Brazil.
In
at
Brazil,
the, at the festival.
Oh, nice, nice.
And also Aquanao.
Oh, wow, great.
Yeah. I was just there fangirling.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Yeah, Aquanao is really good too. I'm gonna pour myself some water.
Okay. So a lot of writers and poets.
Yeah. But also French poetry, Artaud, Rimbaud.
We're almost at the end of our conversation. We're almost at the end of our conversation.
Are we? Already? Yes. Oh, that went so fast. You could go on for hours. Okay.
But I really I really like that both of us thought of bringing language.
True. Yeah.
But in different ways.
Thank you very much, Lisette. That was really nice talking to you.
Thank you. I feel like I need to like take notes, or I rewatch this to see all the names that you dropped and to go into that work as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Didn't you ever? Oh yeah, but you made it listen, yeah.
The song?
Yeah. I was wondering if there was another one of you. Okay. All right. How to wrap this up naturally. Stuff I'm not good at. But thank you very much. And thank you to Basketball for the space.
Yeah.
This wonderful golden space.
I feel like we could go on for hours talking about language.
Look up, who was it that I said earlier on? That you said you were...
So you said Edouard Glissant, then you said Dubois, and then you said a name that I didn't know.
Moten.
Yeah, Moten.
Yeah. But Dubois, I think you should really...
Yeah, I have him already. Moten and Milo.
Yeah.